You don't pay rent, he roared as I dragged my suitcase toward the front door. His first punch missed me but cracked into the doorframe, rattling Mom's wedding photo on the wall. I didn't cry. I hit record. And from that moment, every doorbell camera, every bank transfer receipt, every bruise, every neighbor, and every city ordinance stood on my side. I thought I was just leaving a toxic house. Turns out, I'd just signed the arrest warrant for an entire domestic reign of terror. My name is Harper Quinn, and Tuesday mornings used to be predictable. Night shift at Raven Rock Distribution ended at 5:40 sharp. The warehouse would fall silent except for the hum of refrigeration units, and I'd clock out with the other coordinators, our safety vests catching the first gray light of dawn. The drive home stretched empty along Route 47. My truck's heater barely worked, and the coffee from my thermos had gone cold somewhere around 3 But I kept drinking it anyway, needing something to cut through the metallic taste that 12 hours under fluorescent lights always left in my mouth. Our street in Redwood Springs looked peaceful at this hour. Identical single-story houses with their mandatory HOA-approved mailboxes lined up like soldiers. The Whitakers' sprinklers were already running, creating perfect arcs across their lawn. Their Ring doorbell's blue circle glowed in the morning dimness, always watching. I pulled into our driveway correction, Mom's driveway, though she'd never say it that way and killed the engine. The mailbox door hung open. 3 envelopes jutted out an HOA notice with their pretentious gold seal. The electric bill I knew would have Mom's name on it despite my 6 months of consecutive payments, and something from a roofing company I didn't recognize. Inside, Daryl Knox sat at the kitchen table like he owned the place. The TV blared some morning talk show where perfectly groomed hosts discussed home organization tips. He didn't work nights. He didn't work days either. Hadn't worked in 3 years, but somehow that made him the authority on everyone else's schedule. About time, he grunted, not looking up from his phone. Construction boots on the table, leaving mud prints on Mom's placemat. Coffee's cold. I didn't respond. Just opened my laptop at the counter and pulled up my expense spreadsheet. Every cent documented. Electricity, $342 this month. Water, $87. Internet, $99. Groceries, $412. All from my Raven Rock checks. All with receipts saved to the cloud. You listening to me? His voice had that edge, the one that used to make me flinch. Making fresh coffee now, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Survival meant choosing battles, and Tuesday morning after a night shift wasn't the hill to die on. The TV droned on. A segment about home safety inspections came on, the host's voice chirpy as she discussed carbon monoxide detectors and proper electrical grounding. Remember, your home should be your sanctuary, she said. If you're experiencing domestic violence, the national hotline is available 24/7. Daryl snorted. Domestic violence. Everyone's a victim these days. I measured coffee grounds. 4 scoops. The same routine that kept me grounded. Mom's footsteps creaked overhead. She was awake but wouldn't come down until Daryl's mood was readable. Another survival tactic in this house. Getting real tired of this arrangement. Daryl said suddenly, he meant me. Living here. Existing in the space he considered his, despite contributing nothing to its upkeep. You're 27 years old. Time to stop freeloading. Freeloading. I almost laughed. The man who hadn't paid for toilet paper in 3 years was calling me a freeloader. My savings account had $15,000. My truck was paid off. Title in my name only. 10 more days. And I'd have keys to a studio apartment near the warehouse. Month-to-month lease. No questions asked. But I just poured his coffee and set it down carefully, avoiding the mud prints. Actually, he continued, and now he was looking at me with those small, mean eyes. I think it's time we talked about rent. The words hung there like a threat. Mom owned this house. Her name alone on the deed I'd checked the county records online last month, but pointing that out would escalate things, and escalation before I was ready meant losing control of my exit strategy. I'll think about it, I said. You'll do more than think. He stood up. all 6 feet 2 inches of unemployed rage. This free ride ends now. I nodded, saved my spreadsheet, and headed to my room. Behind me, the TV host had moved on to a segment about security cameras. Modern technology makes it easier than ever to protect your home, she said. Cloud storage means evidence is preserved even if local devices are damaged. In my room, I opened the Ring app on my phone and checked our doorbell camera's settings. Motion detection on. Cloud backup active. Audio recording enabled. 10 more days. I just had to survive 10 more days. The countdown had begun. 10 days until freedom, marked in small X's on the calendar hidden behind my work schedule. The studio apartment near Raven Rock Distribution wasn't much 500 square feet. Beige walls, one window facing a parking lot, but the lease had only my name on it. Wednesday evening. I reconfigured the Ring doorbell app while Daryl watched TV in the living room. The automation setup was simple. Any sound spike above 80 decibels would trigger instant recording and cloud backup. But I added something else: automatic forwarding to Tess Alvarado's personal email. Tess worked patrol in our district, had since we graduated high school together. She knew the signs, knew the patterns, knew when to stay officially uninvolved until the moment came to act. "What are you doing with your phone?" Mom appeared in my doorway, laundry basket balanced on her hip. 49 years old but looking 60, gray roots showing through box dye brown. "Work stuff, scheduling," she nodded, not really listening. "Daryl wants to talk to you about contributing more to household expenses. He mentioned that." "Harper." She set down the basket, and I saw her hands trembling slightly. "Maybe it would help if you paid him something just to keep the peace." "The house is in your name, Mom. You know that doesn't matter to him." No, it didn't. Nothing mattered to Daryl Knox except control and the sound of his own voice. But what killed me was watching her accept it. This learned helplessness that had replaced the woman who once ran her own catering business. "I'll figure something out," I lied. That night, around 11 p.m. I heard Daryl in my room. The door didn't lock. He'd removed the mechanism 2 years ago, for safety. Through barely opened eyes, I watched him go through my purse, pull out my Shell gas card, the one I used for the truck. He pocketed it like he had every right. I waited until his footsteps faded, then opened the Shell app on my phone. 3 taps: report card lost, freeze account, request replacement. The card in his pocket was dead plastic now. Thursday. I started moving things that mattered. My birth certificate and Social Security card went into a safety deposit box at First National, the bank where Daryl didn't have an account. My laptop traveled to work with me, stayed locked in my Raven Rock locker during shifts. Photo albums from before Mom married him, pictures of my real father, who died when I was 15. Those went to Tess's apartment for safekeeping. "Planning a trip?" Daryl asked Saturday morning, watching me carry a small box to my truck. "Donating old clothes." He studied me, suspicious. 3 years of living under his roof had taught him my patterns, but not my poker face. The box actually held my father's watch collection, nothing valuable money-wise, but irreplaceable to me. "Your mother and I think you should start paying rent. $500 a month?" "I'll need to check my budget." "Check it now." I pulled up my banking app, let him see the checking account balance, $842. What he didn't see was the savings account, the money market account, the certificate of deposit that would mature in 6 days. "Looks like you can afford it." "I have the truck payment." "Bullshit. That piece of junk's been paid off for months. I saw the title in your glove compartment." Of course he had. Privacy was another thing that didn't exist in Daryl's kingdom. I made a mental note to move the title to my locker at work. "When Mom gets home, we'll discuss it," I said. "We'll discuss it now." He stood up, moved closer. "I smelled last night's beer and this morning's cigarettes." $500 first of the month. Or you can find somewhere else to live. 6 days until the CD matured. 10 until the apartment was ready. I did the math, paying him nothing, weathering whatever came, then disappearing with evidence of extortion, theft, and financial abuse documented in screenshots and bank records. I need a few days to arrange it with HR, I said. Direct deposit changes. He smiled, satisfied with my apparent submission. Smart girl. That afternoon, while Daryl napped off his lunch beers, I found Mom in the garden. She was pulling weeds with desperate intensity, like if she made the yard perfect enough, everything inside the house would fix itself. Come with me, I said quietly. When I leave, there's room. She yanked a dandelion, roots and all. He's not always like this. Mom, I can't. She looked at me then, and I saw it all: fear, shame, and worse, acceptance. This is my house. My marriage. I can't just leave. I wanted to shake her, show her the bruises on my arms from last month when Daryl had grabbed me for talking back. Show her my bank statements proving I'd kept us afloat. Instead, I said, the offer stands. Always. That night, I updated my exit timeline, scheduled the moving truck for the following Saturday, 6 a.m. sharp, changed my mailing address effective the 15th, set up automatic transfers for my final contributions to Mom's utilities payments that would process after I was gone, proof that I'd never been the freeloader Daryl claimed. The countdown continued. 7 days, then 6, then 5. Saturday morning arrived gray and humid, the kind of Midwest weather that promised storms later. I'd been awake since 4 a.m., methodically packing the last of my belongings into 2 suitcases and 3 boxes already loaded in my truck. The moving company had been canceled, too many potential witnesses. This needed to be clean, quiet, just me walking out the door. At 6:15 a.m., I wheeled my first suitcase down the hallway. The wheels caught on the worn carpet, making a soft rumbling sound. Mom's door stayed closed. She'd taken an extra shift at the hospital last night, convenient timing, or maybe deliberate avoidance. Daryl stood in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, coffee mug in hand, blocking my path to the front door. Going somewhere. I found an apartment. His face shifted through expressions: surprise, anger, then something darker. We discussed rent. You agreed to pay. I never agreed to anything. You don't pay rent. The words exploded from him, spit flying. He slammed the mug down on the side table, coffee sloshing onto Mom's magazines. You've lived here rent-free for years, eating my food, using my electricity. None of it's yours. The words came out before I could stop them. The house is Mom's, the food I buy, the utilities I pay. You contribute nothing. His fist came fast. I saw it in peripheral vision, had just enough time to step back. His knuckles cracked into the doorframe instead, right where Mom's wedding photo hung. The frame jumped, fell, glass shattering on the hardwood. Blood welled on his knuckles. He looked at it, surprised, then furious. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply raised my left wrist, where my Apple Watch was already recording, the little red dots indicating active audio capture. My right hand slipped my phone from my pocket, opened the camera, started filming. You're recording me. He laughed, ugly and loud. In my own house, Mom's house, and yes. He lunged for my phone. I stepped back again, keeping distance, letting the Ring doorbell camera catch everything through the open door. Mrs. Whitaker's curtains twitched across the street she was watching from her kitchen window. Good. Give me the fucking phone, Harper. No. He grabbed my wrist, twisted. The phone fell, bounced on the porch concrete. He followed it outside, stomped down hard. The screen cracked, but the recording had already uploaded to the cloud. Technology was beautiful that way. There's your evidence, you little bitch. I pressed the side button on my watch 3 times. SOS mode. It would send my location to my emergency contact Tess and start another recording. My heart rate showed 130 beats per minute on the display. I'm leaving now, I said, voice steady. You're going to let me go. Like hell. He grabbed my suitcase, threw it back into the house. It hit the coffee table, knocked over a lamp. Then he was in my face, breath hot, fists clenched. But he didn't hit me. Not yet. He knew about cameras now, knew the neighbors were watching. "You owe me $5,000, he said. "Back rent for the past 10 months. I owe you nothing. We'll see what the cops say about that." As if summoned, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Tess had received the SOS, followed protocol, dispatched units to a domestic disturbance. The cavalry was coming, and Daryl knew it. "You called the cops on me." His voice dropped dangerous and low. "You manipulative little—" "I called no one. The watch did. Automatic emergency response when it detects a violent altercation." I kept my voice clinical, factual. "Your grab triggered impact detection. Your yelling triggered decibel alerts. Everything's recorded, time-stamped, GPS located." The sirens grew louder. Maybe 2 minutes out. Daryl's face had gone purple. A vein throbbed in his temple. For a moment, I thought he might actually kill me right there on the porch. Cameras be damned. Instead, he kicked my second suitcase, sending clothes spilling across the driveway. "You're not taking anything from this house. Nothing you didn't pay for." Everything in those bags was purchased by me, with receipts to prove it. "Get the fuck off my property." Mom's property, and she hasn't asked me to leave. Red and blue lights flickered at the end of our street. 2 patrol cars, not speeding but not dawdling either. Professional response to a recorded incident. "You're going to regret this," Daryl said. He stepped back inside, slammed the door. I heard the deadbolt turn. I stood on the porch with my broken phone, scattered clothes, and overturned suitcases. Mrs. Whitaker had come out onto her own porch, phone in hand, recording everything from another angle. Mr. Whitaker stood behind her, arms crossed, wearing his Vietnam veteran cap like he did every Saturday. The patrol cars pulled up. Not Tess, she'd correctly recused herself, avoided conflict of interest, but Officer Martinez, whom I recognized from community meetings, stepped out first, hand on his radio. "Ma'am, we received an emergency alert from this address." "Yes, officer. I was attempting to move out when my stepfather became violent." I showed him my wrist, already bruising from Daryl's grip. "Everything's recorded on multiple devices." Martinez nodded, pulled out his notepad. His body cam's red light blinked steadily. Behind him, his partner stood by the car, watching the house. The door opened again. Daryl emerged, suddenly calm, hands visible and empty. "Officers, there's been a misunderstanding," he started. But I wasn't listening. I was already pulling up the cloud recordings on my watch, preparing to show them everything. The first domino had fallen. Now came the avalanche. Officer Martinez kept his expression neutral as he documented everything. His partner, Officer Daniels, stood between Daryl and me, creating a human buffer zone. The body cameras captured it all: my bruised wrist, the broken phone on concrete, clothes scattered across the driveway like evidence markers. "She's lying," Daryl said, his voice now reasonable, almost charming. "Family argument that got out of hand. You know how kids are." "I'm 27 years old," I told Martinez, "and I have video evidence." I pulled up the Ring doorbell footage on my watch's cracked screen. There he was in clear resolution, grabbing my wrist, throwing my suitcase, his face contorted with rage. The audio was crystal clear. "You don't pay rent." Martinez watched, took notes. "Sir, I need to see your ID." "This is my house. I don't need—" "Sir, your ID, please." While Daryl fumbled for his wallet, I opened my banking app, showed Martinez 6 months of utility payments, all from my account. "Officer, I need to establish something. This house is owned by my mother, Elaine Knox. Daryl Knox has no legal claim to the property. He's not on the deed, not on the mortgage, nothing." "That's irrelevant," Daryl snapped. "I'm her husband. Wisconsin isn't a community property state," I said. The house was Mom's before marriage. Never refinanced, never added him to the title. Martinez looked interested now. "You seem to have done your research." "I work in logistics. Documentation is what I do." Tess arrived 15 minutes later. off duty but in her personal capacity as my friend. She parked down the street, stayed back, but her presence was felt. Daryl kept glancing at her, recognizing the threat of someone who knew the system. I want to file for a temporary restraining order, I told Martinez. I have documented assault, harassment, and attempted unlawful eviction from a property he doesn't own. You can't get a restraining order against someone in their own home, Daryl said. Mom's home, I corrected. And actually, I can. The order would require you to maintain distance from me personally, regardless of location. Martinez called for a supervisor. While we waited, I methodically collected my scattered belongings, photographing each item with Daniels as witness. The Whitakers had come closer, offered their ring footage as additional evidence. We've been watching this escalate for months, Mrs. Whitaker told Daniels quietly. That poor girl pays for everything while he sits around drinking. The supervisor arrived, Sergeant Coleman, a woman I'd seen at city council meetings. She reviewed the footage, examined my wrist, looked at the financial records. Mr. Knox, you're being cited for simple assault and harassment, she said. You have the right to contest this in court. This is bullshit. Sir, calm down. Coleman's voice carried authority. Ms. Quinn, you can file for a restraining order at the courthouse Monday morning. Until then, do you have somewhere safe to stay? Yes, but I wasn't done. While they wrote up Daryl's citation, I pulled out a folder from my truck copies of everything. Bank statements, utility bills, the property deed I'd downloaded from county records, and something else. Officer Coleman, there's one more thing. I handed her a document. This is a roofing contract from 3 months ago. $8,000 job, supposedly signed by my mother. But that's not her signature. Daryl went still. I have her real signature here on these canceled checks. Compare them. Coleman studied both documents. Even from where I stood, the forgery was obvious, too sharp, too careful, trying too hard to match Mom's loose cursive. Where did the $8,000 go? Mr. Knox, Coleman asked. That's between me and my wife. Actually, forgery over $5,000 is a Class H felony in Wisconsin, I said. Up to 6 years in prison. The air changed. This wasn't just domestic drama anymore. This was potential federal crime. We'll need your mother to verify this, Coleman said. She's at work. St. Mary's Hospital, ICU wing. Shift ends at 7 p.m. Daryl's face had gone from purple to pale. You vindictive little bitch. Sir, watch your language, Coleman warned. I pulled out another paper. There's also this HOA complaint. 3 violations for property maintenance that wasn't done despite the roofing contract. The money disappeared, the work never happened, and Mom's been getting fined. Martinez whistled low. Ma'am, you should probably speak with a detective about the forgery issue. Already planned to. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. They gave Daryl his citation. Simple assault, harassment, disorderly conduct, court date in 2 weeks. But the forgery investigation that would come later, after they talked to Mom, after they subpoenaed bank records, after the house of cards started falling. Am I free to go? I asked Coleman. Yes, ma'am. Take your belongings and go. Mr. Knox, you're to have no contact with Ms. Quinn. No calls, texts, emails, nothing. Understood. Daryl nodded, but his eyes promised revenge. I loaded my suitcases into the truck. The Whitakers helped carry the smaller boxes. Tess appeared at my elbow. You okay? Getting there? That was smart. Harper, the paper trail. 3 years of planning. She squeezed my shoulder. Your mom. She won't leave. Not yet. The forgery might change that. Maybe. Or maybe she'd defend him like she always did. Either way, I had my evidence, my exit, my freedom almost in hand. As I drove away, I saw Daryl in the rearview mirror, standing on the porch he thought he owned, in front of the house he'd tried to steal, wearing the citation that started his downfall. The rest would come soon enough. Monday morning at 8:45 a.m. I sat in the First National Bank manager's office with a box of evidence. Every receipt, every statement, every electronic transfer from the past 3 years, organized by date and category. The new account I'd opened was already active, separated completely from any joint accounts Mom had ever added me to. I need documentation of all transfers from my account to Elaine Knox's household accounts, I told the manager. Every utility payment, every mortgage contribution, everything. She pulled the records. The total over 3 years, $42,000. Would you like these notarized? Yes, 3 copies, please. While the bank processed my request, I used their conference room to build my legal timeline. Tess had connected me with a forensic accountant friend who worked cases pro bono when domestic abuse was involved. We video called as I spread papers across the table. "The forgery's your smoking gun," she said through my laptop screen. "But this pattern of financial exploitation, that's RICO territory if prosecutors want to push it? I just want him gone." "Then focus on the restraining order first, financial crimes after." At 10 a.m., I stood before Judge Harrison at the district courthouse. She reviewed my evidence videos, photos of bruises, bank records, the forged contract. "Temporary order granted," she said. "Mr. Knox must remain 500 feet from you at all times. This includes your workplace." "Your Honor, we share a residence. Shared illegally. According to these documents, Mr. Knox has no legal claim to the property owned solely by Elaine Knox. He can petition her for permission to remain, but he cannot prevent you from accessing your mother's home." The TRO was stamped, filed, entered into the system. Daryl would be served within 24 hours. That afternoon, I drove to the house while Daryl was at his weekly poker game. Patterns were useful things. Mom's car was in the driveway. I found her in the kitchen, staring at papers spread across the table. The roofing contract, the real one versus the forged one. "How long have you known?" she asked. 3 months. When the HOA complaints started arriving, "The police called me at work about the forgery." I sat across from her. "Mom, he's stealing from you." The roof needed fixing, but it never got fixed. "Where's the $8,000? She didn't answer. We both knew. Online poker, sports betting, the casino 30 miles south. I pulled out my folder. "Here's what I've paid toward this house. Here's what he's contributed 0. Here's the restraining order that says he can't come within 500 feet of me. You got a restraining order. He assaulted me, Mom, on camera." She studied the court document. "This means he can't live here if you're here. Or I can't live here if he's here. Your choice." It was cruel, forcing her to choose, but 3 years of watching her enable him had exhausted my sympathy. "I found more," I said, pulling out another document. "City housing inspection records. Did you know he had the garage renovated without permits?" She shook her head. "The electrical work is substandard, fire hazard, and there's asbestos in the old insulation he disturbed." I showed her the photos I'd taken. "The city can condemn the garage, maybe the whole house, if this isn't remediated properly. That's a $30,000 job, minimum." "Harper. He also put a camera in the microwave." She looked up sharply. "What?" I showed her the photo on my phone. A tiny wireless camera, the kind sold on sketchy websites, tucked behind the vent inside our microwave. "It faces the kitchen table, where you pay bills, where you write checks, where you enter your passwords." The color drained from her face. "He's been watching everything, your banking, your conversations, your movements." She stood abruptly, walked to the microwave, opened it. The camera was still there, a little black eye. She grabbed it, threw it in the sink, turned on the garbage disposal. The grinding noise was satisfying. "There might be more," I said. "I found that one by accident." "Oh, God." "Mom, I've been documenting everything. The forgery, the theft, the surveillance, the assault. The detective I'm meeting tomorrow specializes in domestic financial abuse. She says with everything combined, he's looking at serious time." Mom sat back down, suddenly looking fragile. "When did you become so calculating?" The first time he hit me and you pretended not to see the bruise. Silence stretched between us. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You'll regret this. I screenshotted it immediately. Forwarded to Tess and the detective. Violating a restraining order, even via text, was another charge. He's texting me threats, I said, showing Mom the screen. She read it, then looked at me with something new in her eyes. Not quite courage, but maybe its predecessor anger. Show me everything, she said. All the evidence. Everything you have. For the next 2 hours, I laid it all out. The forensic accounting. The surveillance equipment. The HOA complaints. The failed inspections. The pattern of abuse escalating from verbal to financial to physical. By the end, she was crying. I need to call a lawyer, she said finally. I have a list. Divorce attorneys who specialize in financial abuse cases. She took the paper with shaking hands. Where are you staying? Maple Row Apartments, Unit 12. You're welcome anytime. He'll come back here, when he gets served with the restraining order. Then call 911. Every time. Build the record. Let him dig his own grave. I gathered my papers, left copies of everything. At the door. I turned back. Mom, the house is yours, only yours. You have all the power here. Use it. Sunday arrived with deceptive calm. I'd orchestrated everything for 1 p.m., the time when Daryl traditionally held court in the living room with his drinking buddies, watching football and pretending to be king of a castle he didn't own. The housing inspector arrived first, clipboard in hand, city badge prominent. Behind him, the HOA compliance officer, a woman named Patricia Stern who took her job seriously enough to work weekends. I met them at the curb, having parked strategically where Daryl couldn't see me, but I could document everything. Ms. Quinn, we've reviewed your complaint, the inspector said. Multiple code violations require immediate inspection. The homeowner, Elaine Knox, has granted full access, I said, showing them Mom's notarized permission letter. She was conveniently at work, another carefully planned detail. We walked up the driveway as Daryl's friend Tom's truck pulled in behind us. Perfect timing. Witnesses who'd report back to Daryl that this was official, not personal. Daryl opened the door, beer in hand, game blaring behind him. 3 other men sat on the couch, buffalo wings and nachos spread across Mom's coffee table. What the hell is this city housing inspection, sir? The inspector said, showing his credentials. We've received multiple complaints about unpermitted modifications and safety violations. You can't just, actually, we can. Patricia Stern stepped forward. The HOA also has documented violations. Failure to comply with inspection results in automatic fines of $500 per day. Daryl's eyes found me standing by the inspector's van. You fucking sir, please mind your language, the inspector said. We're here on official business. They entered with authority. Daryl's friends shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware they were sitting in what might be a crime scene. The TV kept blaring someone had just scored a touchdown. The inspector went straight to the garage. I followed at a distance, recording on my new phone. He pulled out a voltage meter, tested the jury-rigged electrical panel Daryl had installed. This is completely illegal. No permit, wrong gauge wire, no ground fault protection. He took photos. Fire hazard, immediate remediation required. He spotted the disturbed insulation, pulled out a different device. Asbestos meters going off. This whole area needs professional abatement. Patricia documented everything for the HOA files. Mr. Knox, did you perform this work? I don't have to answer that. The homeowner will be fined regardless. $5,000 for unpermitted construction, $3,000 for hazardous materials, plus daily fines until remedied. Back in the house, the inspector found more problems. The camera setup was the crown jewel not just to the microwave, but tiny wireless cameras in the smoke detectors, the air vents, even one behind Mom's bedroom mirror. Illegal surveillance equipment, the inspector said loud enough for Daryl's friends to hear. This violates state privacy laws and city ordinances. Tom and the others were already gathering their things, making excuses about needing to leave. Nobody wanted to be associated with this disaster. These are security cameras, Daryl protested. For protection, hidden cameras in private spaces without consent from all residents. The inspector shook his head. That's criminal, not protective. I pulled out my phone, cast the connection to the living room TV. The game disappeared, replaced by doorbell footage from last Saturday. Suddenly, Daryl's rage-filled face filled the screen, his voice booming through the surround sound. You don't pay rent. The assault played out in high definition: the punch at the doorframe, the grab of my wrist, the destroyed phone. His remaining friends stood to leave. Turn that off. Daryl lunged for the remote. It's evidence, I said calmly. For the criminal case, Detective Morrison wants all footage preserved. The inspector was writing rapidly. Ms. Quinn, given the assault documentation and illegal surveillance, I'm issuing an emergency inhabitability order. This residence is unsafe for occupation until all violations are remedied. You can't kick me out of my own house. Not your house, Patricia said, reading from her phone. Property records show sole ownership by Elaine Knox. I'm her husband. Wisconsin law doesn't grant automatic property rights to spouses for premarital assets, I said. You're technically a tenant, an abusive tenant who's violated multiple city codes. The inspector posted a bright orange notice on the door. All residents have 72 hours to vacate until repairs are completed and verified. This is harassment. I'll sue all of you. Sir, you're welcome to contest this at the City Planning Commission meeting, the inspector said. Next session is in 3 weeks. Tess appeared at the door in uniform. She'd been waiting down the street, officially on patrol, but conveniently nearby. Is there a problem here? These people are harassing me in my home. Sir, I can see an official inspection notice. That's not harassment. It's city business. She looked at me. Ms. Quinn, are you experiencing any violations of your restraining order? I showed her my phone. 7 threatening texts since yesterday. Mr. Knox, sending threatening messages violates the TRO. I'll need you to come to the station. I'm not going anywhere. Sir, you can come voluntarily, or I can arrest you for violation of a restraining order. Your choice. The remaining friends had disappeared. The TV still showed the loop of Daryl's assault. The orange notice fluttered on the door. Everything was documented, witnessed, official. Daryl looked around his kingdom, the house he didn't own, filled with violations he'd created, surrounded by authorities he couldn't bully. His face went through a range of emotions before settling on desperate rage. Elaine will hear about this. She'll choose me over you. Maybe, I said, but the city fines are already at $8,000. The remediation will cost $30,000. The criminal charges are piling up, and Mom's divorce attorney says the forged signature alone is grounds for immediate separation of assets. You turned her against me. No, you did that yourself. I just kept receipts. Tess stepped forward. Mr. Knox, I need you to come with me now. He went, finally, shoulders rigid with fury. As he passed me, he whispered, This isn't over. I held up my phone, showing it was still recording. Actually, it is. The arrest happened at 4:22 p.m. on the front porch where it all began. I watched from the Whitakers' living room window, their Ring doorbell recording everything in pristine resolution as 3 patrol cars pulled up with lights flashing but no sirens. Professional, controlled, inevitable. Detective Morrison had built the case methodically after our Monday meeting. The forged roofing contract, the surveillance equipment that violated state privacy laws, the threatening messages sent after the restraining order, 14 of them now, each one another nail in his legal coffin. Daryl stood on the porch in handcuffs, still wearing the same beer-stained Packers jersey from earlier. The HOA notice fluttered next to him, orange as a hazard sign. Detective Morrison read the charges in a clear voice that carried across the street. Daryl Knox, you're under arrest for forgery in the 2nd degree, identity theft, criminal surveillance, violation of a restraining order, and domestic assault. This is entrapment, he shouted. She set me up. Sir, you have the right to remain silent. Morrison continued, unmoved. Mom had arrived 10 minutes earlier, pulled up to find her house tagged with city violations and surrounded by police. She stood by her car, arms wrapped around herself, watching her husband's empire collapse in real time. The neighbors had all come out, the Whitakers on their porch, the Johnsons from 2 doors down, Mrs. Chin with her teenage daughters, even old Mr. Garrett had wheeled himself out in his walker. Redwood Springs loved its weekend entertainment, and this was better than anything on cable. "Elaine," Daryl called out. Tell them this is our house." Mom walked slowly up the driveway. Each step looked painful. When she reached the porch, she pulled out a manila envelope from her purse. "Actually, Daryl, it's my house. Only mine." She handed the envelope to Detective Morrison. "Divorce papers, filed yesterday, and a formal eviction notice, effective immediately." The look on his face, shock morphing into rage, morphing into something like fear, was worth 3 years of documentation. "You can't evict me. I'm your husband." "Not for long," Mom said quietly. "And my attorney says the forged signature alone constitutes fraud against a spouse." "That's grounds for immediate removal from the property." Morrison nodded to the uniformed officers. They guided Daryl toward the patrol car, his protests echoing off the suburban facades. That's when he made his final mistake, twisting suddenly, trying to break free, his shoulder catching Officer Daniels in the chest. "Resisting arrest," Morrison announced. "Add that to the charges." They put him in the car with less gentleness after that. His head disappeared below the window line, but we could still hear muffled shouting through the reinforced glass. Tess appeared beside me on the Whitakers' porch, off-duty but present as my friend. "You did good, Harper. 3 years of evidence, all admissible. What happens now?" "Arraignment tomorrow, bail hearing. With the restraining order violation and the new resisting charge, he's looking at no bail or something high enough he can't post." Mom crossed the street toward us. The neighbors parted respectfully, their entertainment over, but their respect evident. She climbed the Whitakers' porch steps slowly, like she'd aged a decade in 10 minutes. "I'm sorry," she said to me, "for not believing you, for not protecting you." "You're protecting yourself now. That's what matters." Mrs. Whitaker brought out iced tea. We sat on her porch furniture, the same chairs where she'd watched our dysfunction for 3 years and watched the patrol cars pull away. The red and blue lights reflected off windows and chrome bumpers, then faded around the corner. "The house," Mom said suddenly. "The city violations. I can't afford $30,000 in repairs." "Insurance might cover some," I said. "The illegal electrical work caused damage that's usually covered, and Daryl will have to pay restitution as part of his sentence." "How do you know all this?" "I told you. I work in logistics. Planning is what I do." The HOA president, Patricia Stern, walked over with her clipboard. "Mrs. Knox, given the circumstances and the evidence that you weren't aware of the illegal modifications, the HOA board is willing to waive the fines if remediation begins within 30 days. Mom nodded gratefully. "Thank you." As the sun set, casting long shadows across the lawn where Daryl had thrown my belongings a week ago, Mom pulled out her phone. "What are you doing?" "Changing the locks," she said. "The locksmith offers emergency Sunday service. By 6 p.m., new deadbolts were installed. By 7, a security company was removing every hidden camera, finding 12 in total. By 8, Mom had called a restoration company about the garage. We sat in the kitchen afterward, the same table where Daryl had demanded rent for a house he didn't own. Mom had opened windows for the first time in months, letting in fresh air. "Will you come back?" she asked. "No, I have my own place now, but I'll visit." She nodded, understanding. "The detective said he'll likely take a plea deal. 3 to 5 years. He won't last that long inside. Men like Daryl never do well when they're not in control." "How did you stay so calm?" "Through all of it." I thought about it. He thought rage was power, but rage is just noise, documentation, evidence, legal procedure that's real power. He gave me 3 years to build a case. I just had to wait for the right moment to file it. My phone buzzed. A text from Tess. Arraignment set for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Prosecutor says with your evidence. It's airtight. I stood to leave. You'll be okay. Mom. I know. She looked around the kitchen, seeing it differently now. It's my house. It was always my house. As I drove away, I passed the spot where the patrol cars had parked. No trace remained except maybe the memory in the neighbors' Ring doorbells, uploaded to the cloud, permanent as any conviction. The last domino had fallen exactly where I'd planned it on the front porch where he'd thrown the first punch, recorded by the same cameras he'd never bothered to understand, arrested by the system he'd thought would take his side. You don't pay rent, he'd said. No, but I'd paid attention, and that made all the difference. The truck's engine hummed as I pulled away from the house on Maple Street for the last time. In my rearview mirror, the porch light flickered. Mom had replaced the broken bulb, the one Daryl never bothered fixing despite his claims of maintaining his house. My suitcases sat properly in the truck bed this time, secured with bungee cords instead of scattered across the driveway. The folder on my passenger seat held copies of everything: the arrest report, the arraignment schedule, the divorce papers Mom had finally filed. But I didn't need to look at them anymore. The documentation had served its purpose. At the stop sign, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. For a moment, my chest tightened. Had Daryl somehow gotten access to a phone already? But when I checked at the red light, it was from Mom's divorce attorney. Mr. Knox accepted plea deal. 3 years minimum. Eligible for parole in 18 months. Restitution order includes full repayment of the roofing contract fraud. 18 months. Less than I'd hoped, but more than he'd ever imagined when he'd stood in that doorway, declaring himself king of someone else's castle. The Maple Row apartment complex appeared ahead, modest, but mine. Unit 12 waited with its own key, its own lock, its own door that no one could block. I parked in my assigned spot, another small ownership that mattered more than it should. Inside, the space was mostly empty. A mattress on the floor, boxes serving as tables, my laptop charging in the corner. But the lease agreement magneted to the refrigerator had only one name on it. Harper Quinn. I walked to the window that faced the parking lot. Nothing scenic, just asphalt and a dumpster, but no one could tell me I didn't pay rent here. The proof was in my bank account, auto-drafted on the 1st of each month, clean and documented. My Apple Watch showed 7:43 p.m. in 17 minutes. I'd need to leave for my night shift at Raven Rock Distribution. Back to the warehouse, the forklifts, the shipping manifests that required precise documentation skills that had served me in ways I'd never imagined when I'd first taken the job. A text from Tess appeared. Daryl's in county lockup. Separate wing from general population for his own safety. Apparently, he's already pissed off 3 cellmates by trying to tell them what to do. I almost smiled. Some habits died hard, even behind bars. Another message, this one from Mrs. Whitaker. Your mother's doing okay. She joined our book club. This week we're reading a memoir about surviving domestic abuse. Thought you should know. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 years of silence from the neighborhood. Then suddenly everyone had opinions and support groups. But at least Mom was getting help now, even if it came wrapped in suburban book club politeness. I grabbed my work vest from its hook, in my apartment and headed for the door. The drive to Raven Rock took 12 minutes along empty streets. The warehouse loomed ahead, its loading dock lights cutting through the darkness like stage lights on an empty theater. Inside, the familiar rhythm of night shift took over. Scanning packages, updating spreadsheets, creating paper trails that would stand up in any audit. My coworkers didn't know about the arrest, the evidence folders, the man who'd claimed I lived rent-free while stealing from the woman who'd actually paid for everything. They just knew I was good at documentation, reliable with records, meticulous with details. During break at 2:15 a.m., I sat in the empty cafeteria with my cold coffee and pulled up my banking app. The savings account showed $14,200 less than before, after paying for the apartment deposit and the new phone. But still mine. Every cent earned, documented, protected. A news alert popped up on my phone. Local man arrested for domestic violence and fraud. They'd used his booking photo disheveled hair, angry eyes, the same expression he'd worn when he'd said I'd regret everything. The article mentioned the forged signature, the illegal surveillance, the assault caught on multiple cameras. It didn't mention me by name, just referred to a family member who provided extensive documentation of alleged abuse. Alleged, everything recorded, witnessed, proven, and still the newspaper had to say alleged. But the justice system knew better. The evidence knew better. The paper trail knew better. I closed the app and returned to work. Somewhere across town, Daryl was learning what it meant to live in a space you couldn't leave, under rules you couldn't break, surrounded by cameras you couldn't disable. The orange jumpsuit would replace his Packers jersey. The cell would replace the living room he'd commandeered. The commissary account would replace the bank cards he'd stolen from my purse. And somewhere else, Mom was sleeping in a house with new locks, windows open to let in fresh air, no hidden cameras watching her every move, no one demanding rent for the privilege of existing in her own space. My watch vibrated shift ending soon. I gathered my things, clocked out at 5:40 a.m., walked to my truck under the gray pre-dawn sky. The sunrise painted the horizon pink and orange as I drove back to Maple Row, back to Unit 12, back to the place where no one could ever again say those words that had started it all. You don't pay rent. Because I did. Every month. With receipts to prove it. The key turned smoothly in my lock. The door opened to my space. I set down my vest, kicked off my boots, and stood in the middle of my empty apartment as morning light crept through the window. For the first time in 3 years, I was home. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your own experiences and perspectives mean everything to this community.